Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. The Austin Grand Prix is officially done, and this race may have been one of the most important turning points of the season so far. Um, Coming to Austria, we were talking about this championship as Kimi Antonelli. Kimi's basically, to lose more so than anything else. After Barcelona, my feeling was that Antonelli was still the favorite for the drivers' championship, but then, and of course, Mercedes was still the clear favorite for the constructors. But I also said the next few races, um, like with Austria, Silverstone, and Spa, were going to tell us whether this season was going to become a real fight or whether Mercedes and Antonelli were going to run away with it. Well, Austria gave us an answer. At this point, like Mercedes is still the team to beat. Antonelli is still leading the pack, but George Russell is very much back in the conversation, and George Russell winning right there, basically ahead of Max Verstappen more than anything else, and of course with Kimi, finishing in third. Uh, Basically, it shows at that point in time that that's the big story at that point. This wasn't just a comfortable Mercedes win. The way they won, the way that essentially Russell won, as well as the way Max and Antonelli finished off. I mean, Russell won the Grand Prix, of course, ahead of Max Verstappen and Antonelli, but with the top three finishing within 2 seconds of each other. Russell crossed the line just like 1.61, about 1.6 seconds ahead of Verstappen, and I would say that Antonelli was only about point 0.3 or point 0.4 seconds behind Verstappen in third. Let me see the stats here for a second. And it wasn't a comfortable Mercedes win from that perspective, right? And like this is a pressure win where Russell had to manage the race. He had to manage the heat. Um, he had to also manage Verstappen. That was the biggest factor as well too, closing down on him, and the fact that his own teammate, the championship leader, was right there as well. Now, of course, with Hamilton in there, I thought maybe Hamilton would probably finish P2, at least in the top three for sure, but the race was his to lose. Him and Leclerc battling it out. I mean, the fact that they were going at each other as well as both Hamilton and Verstappen going at each other as well too. That was pretty interesting. This was a really interesting race. This is by far more entertaining than I thought it would have been at this point. Quite honestly. Um, but once the race settled in, I mean, I think it like Mercedes showed that they, that's what why they were the benchmarks of this season basically. And Russell controlled their phase early, from that point, as well as Antonelli staying in the mix, even though when the race was disrupted by the virtual safety car after Carlos Sainz stopped on the main straight, which kind of sucked. Russell never looked rattled, which I mean, I think that's more of like his well, being a veteran in the field at this point. The late race tension was the best part. That I mean, I think, like I said, that was one of the things where I loved this race. Quite honestly, Verstappen, who started fifth, had real pace, and for the first time this season, it genuinely looked like the Red Bull had a car that could have challenged the win. But Verstappen pushed Russell late, and after what had been a frustrating season by Red Bull standards, this second place felt bigger than just 18 points. Roy's reported that, like Verstappen said, that this was the first time this season he felt he could fight for a win. Now, does that mean Verstappen is back in the title fight? I don't think so, honestly, but time will tell. Let's see what happens. He's seventh in the standings right now with 73 points, while Antonelli is like with 171. So like that's a 98. Yeah, 98 point gap basically after 8 rounds. So Verstappen needs more than just a strong point. He needs to win here on out. That's pretty much that's the only way he's gonna like compete. And he needs Red Bull upgrades to keep going and working basically, and probably needs Mercedes to start taking points off of each other. But for the race itself, Verstappen was one of the biggest winners of the weekend. Not only because he won, he didn't, but because Red Bull finally looked threatening again. So it might come back for next year, depending on what it is. But now I want to talk about Antonelli at this point. Third place might sound disappointing for him because he's so dominant. He's been so dominant this season, but this is actually the kind of result that wins championships. He didn't have his cleanest race by far, but yeah, and of course he didn't win. But Russell cut into like the lead, uh, into Antonelli, but Antonelli still finished at least he podiumed. I mean, quite honestly, and without and sort of limiting the damage of what Russell could take out of it at that point. I mean, now it's going to be. It sounds like it's going to be a battle between Russell and Hamilton for second place more than anything else. I mean, after Austria, after Austria, Antonelli still leads the drivers' championship with like about 100 and let me see here, 171 points. Yeah, 170 points. Where Russell's like 131 points, a good 40 point difference. And now, like Hamilton dropping to third with 125. So between Hamilton and Russell, there's not much of a huge gap difference in there that from that situation. So the championship picture looks like this. Like Antonelli is probably the favorite, but Russell has reestablished himself as the main challenger, and that makes the Mercedes dynamic very fascinating, almost like the similarity with um, Hamilton back in the day with Hamilton and Bottas and Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. Because this is no longer just a Mercedes has the best car. This is becoming a teammate battle, which I just have basically said from the past. And Antonelli has 5 wins already this season. Russell now has 2. I think Mercedes has won 7 of the first 8 races. I would say, yeah, that's about right. First 8 races. This dominance is pure, but I think the dominance inside one team can still create the drama. Like we saw it with Hamilton and Nico with the 13, 14, 15 season, even the 2016 season. Russell needed to win badly, of course. He won the season opener in Australia. Then Antonelli went on and on that run, of course. And suddenly the whole conversation shifted towards, I would say, the younger superstar. I mean, Austria was Russell reminding everyone, I'm still here, that I can still win. And I'm not handing this championship to my teammate. Though he does have the inexperienced youth aspect of things, but he seems a little bit more mature than what Piastri was last compared to last year. Now on the other side, Ferrari definitely had a rough Sunday. That's the sad part about it. This was supposed to be a chance for Ferrari to build off momentum, especially after Hamilton's win in Spain. But instead, Austria felt like a reality check. Hamilton finished fifth. Leclerc finished, I think, eighth. Yeah, let me check. Eighth, and Ferrari struggled with tire degradation, overheating, and strategy, of course. That was a big problem, of course, when the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes leading by 302 points. Ferrari's like maybe a 204. Hold on, let me check. 204 points behind him, whereas McLaren's like 159. Red Bull fourth with 115. So for Mercedes, Merc has still has a high, has a very dominant lead at this point. Now, even though McLaren was solid but not spectacular, Piastri finishing fourth was pretty impressive, and Lando Norris finishing seventh. That picked up the points, but they weren't really in the fight for the win, to be honest, at this point in this race. The question is are they close enough to capitalize when Mercedes or Ferrari are making mistakes? Right now, they look like strong points, scoring team, but reality is like I don't. It hasn't been consistent race winning. Well, they haven't been a consistent race winning threat. Let's be honest about that. But I think my biggest takeaway from Austria is this. First, George Russell is back in the championship conversation. He's still 40 points behind Antonelli, but this win changes the tone of the season, of course. Second, Antonelli is still the favorite, I think. He didn't win, but finishing third on a difficult day is exactly how you protect a championship lead. And then, of course, then you got third with his Verstappen and Red Bull may finally have found something, maybe have found something to come back, but he's probably too far back right now to like be favorite. But if Red Bull can keep improving, it's possible he can go for that P3 spot, that third spot basically. Um, he could cause a lot of chaos in this aspect of the race as well too. To the point like if he starts winning a couple races, he could throw off Antonelli and Russell off their games at that point. Now Ferrari's aspect of like their momentum, their Spain momentum took a hit. But Hamilton and Leclerc were expected to be closer, but Austria changed everything and exposed a lot of weaknesses with Ferrari. And fifth, of course, with the fact that Mercedes and being, up there, McLaren looks like the Constructors' Championship was where they were favored early on in the season by a lot. But now the drivers finishing when your drivers finish first and third and your closest rivals are fifth and eighth, that's not how a championship gets built. Let's be honest about that. So McLaren, the fact is, like being the heavy favorites, I think they've dropped considerably at this point. So do they come back to get P1? I doubt it. Can they get P3? I mean P2. I mean finish second in the constructors? Most likely. They're not that far from Ferrari at that point, honestly. The possibility is this also as well too. Is like if these two can score up, and Piastri and Lando can score P1 and P2s here on out consistently, then chances are, yeah, that might help out from that aspect. But I think the fifth point to take it from this is basically Mercedes looks like the constructor championship to be favored by a lot. And when your drivers finish like first and third, I mean, and your closer rivals like again eighth, I think this is going to change everything for them at that point. So I think where do I stand in Austria after this? I think I would say this. I'm not changing my championship pick just yet. But I still think Kevin and Kimmy is basically gonna like most likely win the championship, but the gap is definitely no longer as comfortable as we thought it would be. For him to call it a runaway from this perspective, but Russell is. It looks like now Russell is the biggest threat more than anything else. And if he could carry this momentum into Silverstone, this could become a real intra-team title battle, quite honestly. And I think that's more of a case where like the aspect if Hamilton doesn't correct himself with Ferrari, they don't correct themselves, it's probably just going to be between the two teammates and Merck basically at that point. And I think for the aspect of like the Constructors' Cup, Mercedes being so far ahead, it's theirs to lose at this point. It's quite honestly theirs to lose. I think they have the best package and the best consistency. And right now, they have two drivers who are both capable of winning. We're saying that. I think Austria gave us something that this season desperately needed, which was definitely some a little bit of tension. And I think that's what fans really want to see is like the tension within these races. Russell wins. Verstappen shows signs of life. Antonelli protects the lead. Ferrari stumbles. McLaren hangs around in that aspect. Now, we go from here to Silverstone with Russell full of confidence, Hamilton needing to respond, of course, and of course Norris wanting to make a home race statement. I think more than anything else. I mean, you would think Hamilton would, but I think Norris wants to pick that home, make that statement himself based at home. And Antonelli is trying to prove that Austria is just a small bump in what could be basically still a championship winning season for him. I mean, I think I would say that's it for my Austrian like Grand Prix recap, but let me know in the comments. Like, do you think are you still picking Antonelli for the championship, or did Russell's win change your mind? And as always, like and subscribe. And if with it, I'll leave it at that. Unfiltered, unedited, of course, always unrehearsed. Until next time.